$200 billion. I need you to stop and really feel that number. The entire U.S. Interstate Highway System cost $89 billion. The Apollo moon program cost $196 billion. And a company that started by letting college students poke each other online is building something in a Louisiana cornfield that will cost more than both of them combined. This is the most expensive private infrastructure project in human history. Nothing else comes close. But what shocks me isn't the number. It's this: 3 years ago, every tech analyst on the planet was writing the same headline: "Is Zuckerberg finished?" This is the story of one man, one enormous bet, and a question no one can answer yet. Here's a fact you might have forgotten: in a single year, Mark Zuckerberg personally lost more than $70 billion. Not his company. Him. In 2022, Meta's stock dropped nearly 70%. Over $700 billion in market value gone. The reason was the metaverse. Zuckerberg had bet the company on a future where people wore clunky headsets to attend virtual meetings. The world responded by mocking his avatar's lack of legs. Then, at the end of 2022, OpenAI dropped ChatGPT. It hit like an atomic bomb. 100 million users in under 2 months. Meta's internal reaction? Caught completely off guard. The company had its own AI research lab, FAIR, running for over a decade, publishing world-class papers. But they were doing research. OpenAI was shipping products. Meta had the gun. No bullets. Starting in 2023, Zuckerberg cut over 20,000 jobs, declared it the year of efficiency, and pushed out the Llama family of open-source models, betting that giving AI away for free would build an ecosystem that could catch OpenAI. For a while, it seemed to be working. By 2024, Zuckerberg was on earnings calls predicting Llama would become the most advanced AI in the industry. Then 2025 arrived. DeepSeek launched. Gemini 2.5 took the benchmarks. Llama 4 shipped to a shrug. Wall Street analysts wrote, Meta entered the year as an AI winner. Now it faces growing questions. That's the world Hyperion was born into: a man who'd been laughed at, climbed back, declared victory, and got knocked down again. Everyone watching the AI race was obsessing over one question: whose model is smarter? Zuckerberg stopped asking that question entirely. His conclusion: the model layer will commoditize. Think about what that means. In 2023, GPT-4 was a miracle, and the API pricing was brutal. By 2025, the market was flooded with models of roughly equal capability: open source, closed source, American, Chinese, and most users couldn't tell the difference. Just like cloud computing. AWS had a monopoly once. Now Azure, Google Cloud, and Alibaba Cloud are all good enough. That's commoditization. If models commoditize, where does the real moat come from? Zuckerberg's answer: compute infrastructure. Think of it this way. If the future of AI is a war, then GPUs are oil. You don't need the smartest general. You need fuel. And the side that stockpiles enough fuel before the war starts gets to fight it on their own terms. There's a brutal logic to this kind of competition: first mover advantage is nearly irreversible. If you build a $200 billion data center campus, your competitor can't just hire more engineers to catch up. They need land permits, power grid approvals, new power plants, hundreds of miles of transmission lines. The fastest that process moves is 5 to 8 years. Hyperion isn't about winning today's AI race. It's about buying the ticket for the one that starts in 2030. Here's where the story gets genuinely clever. Did you assume Meta was writing a $200 billion check out of its own pocket? That's not what happened. The Hyperion campus sits in Richland Parish, Louisiana, a place most Americans couldn't find on a map. Nearly 4,000 acres, roughly 4 times the size of Central Park. Up to 9 buildings. 5 gigawatts of AI compute capacity. To power it, Entergy Louisiana is building 10 gas-fired power plants generating over 7 gigawatts, originally 3 plants. Meta pushed it to 10. That's the scale. Now here's the money. Meta used a structure that Wall Street invented for sovereign debt and applied it to a tech company for the first time. Imagine you want to build a 100-story skyscraper but don't want the debt on your books. So you find investors, give them 80% ownership of the building, keep 20% yourself, but write into the contract that you are the only one who will ever operate it, and the investors just collect rent with zero say in decisions. That's exactly what Meta did. They created a special purpose vehicle called Beignet Yes, named after the famous Louisiana pastry. Private credit giant Blue Owl Capital owns 80%. Meta owns 20%. Morgan Stanley packaged $27 billion in debt and sold it to institutional investors around the world. BlackRock alone bought over $3 billion in bonds. The result, $27 billion in debt stays off Meta's balance sheet entirely. Meta gets 100% operational control in exchange for 20% equity. Plain English, spend other people's money, build your own empire, keep the empire. At the same time, Meta announced layoffs of 8,000 people and froze 6,000 open roles. Zuckerberg was direct about what this was, not a contraction, but a reallocation. Moving money from headcount into compute. Trading people for GPUs. $200 billion isn't enough on its own. You also need land, power, and a government that will move fast. This is the part where Zuckerberg played politics like a contact sport. According to Bloomberg's reporting, before the project was publicly announced, Zuckerberg personally lobbied three people: President Trump, House Speaker Mike Johnson, whose congressional district includes Richland Parish, and Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry. Not one after another. All three, simultaneously. The result, Louisiana granted a $3.3 billion tax abatement package, sales tax exemptions on AI chips, and fast-tracked every energy infrastructure permit. Trump mentioned the project unprompted at a cabinet meeting. Governor Landry called it the largest single private investment in Louisiana's history. 3 parties. 3 wins. A textbook exchange of interests. Meta got the land, the power, and the tax treatment. Louisiana got 5,000 construction jobs and a chance to tell the country it had entered the tech economy. Washington politicians got a headline. Everyone won. At least on the surface. Now I want to say something uncomfortable. This $200 billion bill isn't only being paid by Meta. 10 gas-fired power plants means Meta is becoming one of the single largest sources of carbon emissions in Louisiana. The Sierra Club has publicly questioned whether this project contradicts Meta's previous renewable energy commitments. Meta's response: they'll build 2.5 gigawatts of renewable capacity alongside it. The problem is that the renewable energy comes online in 2030. The gas plants are being built right now. Then there's the electricity bill. U.S. utilities plan to spend $1.4 trillion by 2030 expanding the power grid to serve data centers. A significant portion of that cost will pass through to ordinary households as higher electricity rates. Hyperion alone will consume more power than several mid-sized Louisiana cities combined. There's the water question too. Data centers need enormous amounts of cooling water. So does Louisiana agriculture. That competition has already started. And the jobs: 500 permanent operational positions for a rural parish with chronic unemployment. Lifeline, or a drop in the ocean? Every great bet in tech history has someone paying a price that doesn't show up in the press release. I've told you the bull case. Now I want to say something nobody wants to look at directly. Hyperion might become the Concorde of the AI era. You know the Concorde. Technologically, it was one of the greatest achievements in aviation history: supersonic passenger flight, twice the speed of sound, London to New York in 3 hours. The engineers who built it were proud for the rest of their lives. Commercially, it was a catastrophe. Too expensive, too loud, too fuel-hungry. It was retired. Now it lives in museums. Brilliant technology. Failed business. The risks facing Hyperion are more real than most people want to admit. First, the compute efficiency revolution. DeepSeek proved you can approach frontier performance with dramatically less compute. If that trajectory continues, $200 billion in raw GPU power might lose to a leaner, smarter architecture. You built the world's biggest cannon. The target keeps getting smaller. Second, the architectural shift. If the future of AI is distributed agents running on the edge, not centralized large model training, then the advantage of a massive centralized data center gets diluted. You built the world's biggest oil refinery. The world switched to electric. Third, the most extreme scenario. If AGI arrives by 2028, it may design computational architectures that don't depend on today's GPU paradigm at all. At that point, Hyperion becomes a $200 billion Bronze Age armory. Meta's own financials are already sending a signal. The 2026 capex guidance, $125 to $145 billion, is nearly double the prior year. When that number was announced, the stock fell 6% in after-hours trading. Markets are spending real money to express real doubt. In 2006, a college dropout built a website that let people add each other as friends. He used a few $1,000s in servers and a dorm room. 20 years later, he's standing in a Louisiana cornfield, making a $200 billion bet that he can build the infrastructure empire of the AI age. He was laughed at. He fell. He climbed back. Got knocked down again. Then he made a decision that most people thought was too large to be serious. Will history prove him right? Nobody knows. But one thing is certain, while everyone else was debating whose AI model was smarter, he went and built power plants. That verdict belongs to you.